love doing that to Dr. Richardson. I'm doing that to Dr. Richardson. She does it to me.
You guys are ready.
I know. I say, okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get everybody to see.
Good. Okay.
I don't know.
Look, false alarm. False alarm. Say it again. False alarm.
Yeah,
false alarm.
He's already learned how to use the gas.
Too well.
She did that to me often enough. I finally got to do it for her. 2.5 hour meeting.
Yes, we did. We really did. Very thorough. Very thorough.
Question. Thank you, Ms. Bell.
Feeling better. I see your lips. You had it rough. You had it rough.
For vacation.
When we were on our trip, my husband decided that we would take a hike. He did not tell me that it was going to be 7 miles in the sun.
Oh, goodness. So you got burned.
Oh, you got a fever
And that's from the sun.
Look, I thought it was from the head cold.
He said, no, he was like, honey, this is great shape.
What is CCR graduation requirements?
College and career readiness.
Who does that report?
If he's not here, just skip to number 2.
Who does the electronic?
But Jeff, we have somebody to answer the questions. We have to have someone to answer the questions.
Chuck and Jason.
You think they could?
Brandon.
Think they
Can you answer the questions on the electronic?
That's lazy going off that you took care of your gifts.
The update to the electronic boards package.
I mean, basically, we're just trying to adopt. Yeah. Oh, you're talking about. Okay.
Board questions.
Board
I
questions.
think that you're talking about to do the packets that way.
Yeah.
From my understanding, we're trying to send out a quick quote for,
So we have to bid it.
well, no, it's kind of a quick quote. I mean, yes and no. I think we're gonna be able to get that
Well,
from.
let me call them and give that explanation. You can do that apart from Dr.
Actually, Brandon, I think,
Who?
Brandon.
I want
From my understanding.
It's on the agenda, so I don't know who that is.
From my understanding, I just got
Sounds like
simply just registered both Alabama 5 and 6. I think we're just gonna do an 8. Because I think there's some question as to whether you need to do a quick quote or doing something on the 8, starting at 2.
So if I can call you while we're waiting for Dr. Matthews to make a phone call.
I don't know all the details of it, I just know we are.
Considering the more
some kind of safeguard.
We're at this time, we're generating an A2, which is a purchase order to purchase the software, CNL software, for water
Dr. Mackey, I have an implant, so I have to take
I can't drink coffee with this evening, so just in the leave, I'm probably going to take it out so I can have some coffee. Carol said I sounded fine this morning.
So what do you have, retainer?
Yes.
Dr. Mackey, we will reconvene. I finally got to hit the gavel after all these months. Under superintendent's updates, the CCR requirements, Dr. Mackey,
Yes, sir.
I already did
He
that
did.
twice.
He didn't hit like you do, but.
Well, he do it loud. You got to hear it.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Reynolds. So we, one of the things that I mentioned last month we were going to talk about is requiring, what it would look like to require a college career ready standard for high school graduation. So you have this actually under item B, because I'm going to talk about it as an update. We can discuss, it's pretty straightforward, but it also obviously would take a change in the code in the graduation requirements. So it's under item 3. You don't see it under the superintendent update. You're looking for it. It's under item 3 because that's actually your code section. Now, a couple of you have called and asked me about this in the interim since last month. So let me give a little more of an update of what we're thinking about. So first of all, it's part of high school graduation requirements, and the calls have been about, generally high school graduation requirements. Are there, is it time? We've really not done a major overview of high school graduation requirements since the 90s. And so should we make we've made some changes. There have been some tinkering with it, but not a major overhaul. So should we look at the whole thing? But the big thing right now is CCR. So this is something, some of you know, we had a couple of conversations informal before the pandemic. But then we had a pandemic. That took a lot of energy and time. And so as we come back after that, requiring CCR would be a minimum requirement for graduation if we were to do that. Now, we currently be a little different from FAFSA because that's requirement to complete it or to waive out of it. For this, I don't think we'd say you complete it or waive out of it. It'd be complete one. We do want to have, if we make this change, and I'll be glad to get into the change in a minute, but I want to talk about the timeline first. Why we're talking about it now, because we such a major change is like in the Board instituted graduation exam years ago. You can't just do it for an upcoming class. So if we made a change, it would be prospective for this coming year's 8th graders, so that they could, as they develop their 4-year plan, have it in their plan. So it's the graduating class of 28. You think about how long it takes to plan to put something in place. We sent you something a few weeks ago, and I may need to try to pull it up. We're really short on staff, but we can get it online, I think. But and it was your schools in your district, the college career ready rates. They go from below 40% in some high schools to, we have 2 schools that have 100%. And they're able to do 100% because we've approved for them to have basically their own CCR pathway. They have one of them, I know Dr. Carter is well familiar, the one at Piedmont, the other one I think is at Florence. And they've developed their own internal system. Those are approved right now. But if we went to this, those might not be approved anymore because we would be going to a different proposals to use the ACCP registry, which is a little more high standard there. So those schools would have to rethink that program too. If we're relying on this program, what would we want to change? And that's why we just need to give people time to implement. I will tell you, I talked to one superintendent who shall remain nameless, but his is really low. And I talked to him at the superintendent's or school board's meeting, I think school board's meeting, and said, what would you think about this change? And he said, well, we've really we've got a lot of other things we focus on, so high poverty district. We've never really focused on that, but we just this last year started focusing on how do we raise our CCR rates. So obviously, if you make it a requirement, there are going to be people who are really going to focus on it. But the question is, do they have the capacity? So,
Well, Dr. Mackey, last time
yes.
you asked us if we would go and talk to our schools, and so I reached out to all 21, and they were excited about it. They were like, this will give us the leverage we need when we talk to parents and students to encourage them. Because I also said we had talked about the report card as well, because I think Representative Collins at the legislative luncheon that we had at our last retreat, she had brought up looking at the report card. And the majority preferred, at least for
District 6, the majority said no, parents don't understand the report card. And students don't care. That's not a motivating factor.
Yeah.
Graduation rate, whether I graduate, that will motivate them to do this. And so every one of them said that, well, not everyone, but almost everyone, a large majority, said they would prefer to see at the graduation rate. Then I said, what resources would you need to accomplish this?
Right.
And there were variations on this theme, but to quote from one superintendent, to use the foundation program to fully fund CTE units with at least one CTE unit at each high school was their request. So, because
Fund, say that again.
they wanted the foundation program
Yeah.
to fund at least one CTE unit per high school.
So teacher.
Right.
Teacher.
Right, a teacher, because now they say they're having to pull
From the
units from the high school, like if it's a career tech center, they pull units from the high school to
Oh,
fund the career
yeah.
tech center. So they want career tech units fully funded. And they said if you do, and they said, because I mentioned the 8th grade, that it would, we had discussed it would start with this year's 8th grade class. We wouldn't implement it immediately. I had some schools said we could do it this year.
Yeah.
We want to do it sooner. Can we do it sooner? So could it be a local decision? Could a local board,
Well, it's gonna be a local decision now.
you could decide now, right? We would set the minimum, and then a local school board could choose to go above and beyond that.
Well, they can do that already.
I think
Okay.
that's what Piedmont already does, isn't it?
Well, with a certain,
Yeah,
yes.
they can, local boards can have additional requirements, but they can't go below what's in the code. They can absolutely have additional requirements for their diplomas.
Well, many were
We would-
excited. They were happy we
Oh,
were
that's
talking
good to
about it.
hear. I think it's a good thing. Now, I would not want us to go any faster than that because the districts that need the support they're gonna have to, it's gonna take them some time to put it in. The funding, that would obviously take a change in the divisors. Career tech units they're a bit of an anomaly because they are funded, but they're built into the funding. They're built into the formula, just like PE teachers are built into the formula, and science teachers and special ed teachers. And so we hear the same complaint. I don't have enough special ed teachers. I don't have enough of this or that. The foundation program funds teachers, and then the district has to decide how to use those teachers, how to use those units. I know I hear that complaint too, that in many districts they say we're going to take a teacher from each high school and consolidate those at the Career Tech Center. And then the principals say many times, well, we want our teacher unit back and we just won't send any students to our Career Tech Center. That is a perennial problem. But I don't know that that's one we can solve other than asking for additional funding.
I'm just sharing
We
with
can do
you
that, yeah.
what they said.
We get requests for standalone funding for career tech centers. And we could do that. I mean, we couldn't do it, the legislature could do it, but it also causes, you could cause a fight between your local high school and the career tech center if those students are not double counted. So see, now they get double counted. They're counted as a student at the high school and a student at the career tech center. And if you said, we're gonna fund these career tech centers standalone and take that funding away from the high school, I promise you there are principals out there that'll discourage their kids from going to save their units. So, but that's a good point, but it is, it can be fraught with problems. Career tech, so our big growth, so I mentioned this, of course we had ACT this morning. So ACT is, we hope to grow more students getting qualifying scores on ACT, but that is a limited number. That'll never be the majority. More of our students qualify the work keys than any other way, and then it's career tech credentials, and then dual enrollment. But if when you add work keys and ACT together, which work keys is an ACT product, that's about half the students who get a CCR, get it that way. I do like what you said about the report card, because it's true that the report card's a report on the school. It is not a motivator to students necessarily to help their school move from a B to an A. Now, some students will, but when you make it personal to the student, they'll make a change. There are 10 areas, I think. Those are listed in here.
I was gonna ask you a question about item F. In order to have the CC, so college and career readiness, on the item F, they have to then be able to do, it says one or more of the following.
Right.
These.
At least one of these. So to be a CCR, to be a graduate then, they would have to have one of these. So let's just go through them. Earning a benchmark score in any subject area on the ACT. So they don't have to benchmark on all of them. Actually, nationally, it's fewer than 10%, I think, of students who benchmark on all 4 areas of ACT. That's very uncommon, but at least one area.
Okay.
Which is our current rule. Earning a qualifying score of 3 or more on advanced placement. And what we see is the students who qualify on ACT are the same students who qualify on advanced placement. There's very little difference. So,
and for those places that don't have advanced placement, there are other options.
There are,
Some
yes,
places don't have that.
IB, there are very few students with IB, so that's the next one. And the next one's earning college credit while in high school, so that's dual enrollment credit. That one is a big growth area. We see there's a lot of potential in growing dual enrollment. But again, it does depend on what part of the state you're in and how cooperative your local 2-year or 4-year college is. So some of the two-year colleges in particular, some of them are amazing, and they offer all these dual enrollment opportunities. But some high schools just they don't want to go into it. And so I've talked to Chancellor Baker about that, and so we have he's aware that we're talking about this, and they are willing to try to pick up the slack in some areas. We have some 4-year colleges that do dual enrollment also. Then the next one is number 5, earning a silver or gold on the Work Keys exam. And again, most of our students, about 37%, that's how they get their CCR. We don't require that anymore. It used to be a requirement, but we got real pushback, especially from some of the high schools that send the vast majority of their students to college. That their students didn't take it all that seriously. So we rolled it back and made it an option. But it's still over 95% of the high schools participate in the Work Keys. And some of the local school districts do require it, even though we don't require it. So that's still a very important test. I think all of our students, I will tell you, my son took it this year. So one of the ways we could grow, another area for growth in this, is to offer the Work Keys more often. So we've reached out to ACT about that. We already have some schools that offer it in the sophomore year. So they can, because our traditional pathway has been to offer it in the senior year. So if you don't make the silver, then there's not another chance. And so a lot of schools are already starting to offer it as a sophomore. It's a much cheaper test than the ACT. They pay for it themselves, and then if students, they get a score back and they can say, well, we need to take it again. Here's some remedial stuff to work on. So that's one area for growth. Completing an in-school apprenticeship. Mr. Moore's over here, and he can better speak to this than I can, but that's a difficult one because to do an apprenticeship, you have to be 18. So there are not many students that it will pertain to because you have to turn 18 to enter an apprenticeship. But it is growing. Y'all know, many of you remember Josh Laney, that used to work for us, and he now runs the Office of Apprenticeship, and it is a fast growing area, and we're hoping we can get more high school apprentices, but most of those apprentices are out of high school because
The age.
the age. So for instance, if you can't do it until you're 18, and you turn 18 in, say, March of your senior year, then it's just too late. It just doesn't apply. So we have some students it applies to, but for many it would not. Earning a career tech industry credential on the list of listed on the compendium of valuable credentials for the ACCCP. So this is a big project. Again, Mr. Moore's worked on this. Jimmy Hull's done a lot of work on this. But as y'all know, our staff are all at Mega Conference. I wish they were here to help discuss this. But this is a credential registry that we are building along with the governor's office and the community college system that's bigger than just K-12. But it's a way of making sure that the credentials we do have value. And so this is one more way of raising the bar, but there are literally dozens, maybe hundreds of credentials out there, right?
4,000 in just Alabama alone.
4,000.
Wow.
So, and they can be, there's some big ones, like there's a welding credential. We have a lot of students that take that test for the welding, but then there are some that maybe there are just a few students in here that are, or may not have anybody enrolled in. But that's one, and that also can work hand in hand with dual enrollment, because a lot of them lead to stackable credentials. That's another term they've taught me. So there's multiple options. Being accepted in the military before graduation, obtaining a career technical education completer status. So this is brand new. We've had completer status, but we actually sent a memo out yesterday to superintendents on this, because now we have gotten an amendment to our federal ESSA plan that allows us to count graduates toward the report card if they get completer status. Completer status means they take one foundations course in a career tech field and 2 additional courses in that same field, or one foundations, one, there's a middle level, I can't think what it's called, and one capstone. So I'll give you an example. Ag, y'all know Ag is the one that I did, and I understand. And Christopher just finished with an Ag credential. So you take a foundations course, which in Ag is typically taught in the freshman year, and then at least one intermediate course. So I'm looking at Miss West, because over there they have this great aquaculture class, and it could be an aquaculture class, it could be a shop class, there are multiple things, and then an additional one. So they would have 3. That additional one could be a capstone project. So if you're an FFA, the one I really understand, all FFA members, to get their state farm degree, have to have a capstone project, and that counts. And that might be, mine was raising a calf to sell. They do different kinds of things. Now, though, there are all kinds of things. You don't have to raise an animal or a field of corn. But there are these projects that you have to complete, and you have to show you earned so much money and keep records and those kind of things. That's a capstone project. So it's one foundation, one intermediate, and one capstone project, or just the foundation and 2 intermediate courses. Because some of our programs do not lead to capstone courses. Try to design a capstone course. A capstone course can also be cooperative ed, so they co-op somewhere. It can be a workplace experience that's not apprenticeship. So we offer workplace experiences that don't lead to apprenticeship because you're not 18. But anyway, that's brand new. But so when the federal government approved that amendment, which I know y'all, because we talked about that, some of you are thinking, well, haven't you already talked about this? Well, I did when they first approved it, but they made it retroactive to the last school year. So we sent a memo out that our superintendents can now go back and see if they have graduates that were course completers from last year, they can raise their CCR rate for last year because it's retroactive. So that's good. Number 10, additional college career readiness indicator approved by the State Board of Education. So again, we always like to put a caveat in there that down the road, if there's something additional that y'all say, you know what, apprenticeship's new this year, there's something else that you think this is really valuable and we want to count this, then it could be added in the future. It really, because you would have to add it, 10 being in there or not being in there really doesn't matter. Because you have to vote again to add one, but at least it makes it clear to everybody that we are open to additional changes in the future. And then we wanted to put something in about special ed services. If we do have children that are on an IEP and they are completing their program, then they could continue to graduate. We do that now. So we have students that earn an alternate high school diploma because they're on, they're on a specific pathway that's limited to, I think, no more than 2% of students, but there may be students who we don't want to hold them back from graduating because there's not an applicable credential program for them. And then C is the one that your guidance counselors do not like, but we need to have in there, and that's if they earn. So let's say somebody finishes high school, they completed all their courses, but they don't get one of these, CCR, then they cannot graduate. But they can get a GED, or they can go on to junior college, they go on to technical college, and they may earn a credential there. Then that credential could come back, and they could come back to the school and get a high school diploma. We did the same thing with the graduation rate. People might have passed every section but social studies, which, believe it or not, was the one that was most difficult for people to pass. And so they went on and got a job, but 2 or 3 years later, if they came back and passed the social studies, they could get a diploma even though they had aged out otherwise. So we
Is
want
this
to give
within
people
2
that.
years though? Do they have to do it?
Yes, within 2 years. Legal put that in there, I think, at the request of the counseling section, because it could go on for ever.
What's wrong with the 50-year-old coming
Well,
back?
it could.
Come on.
So I have a question, I just want to clarify. So we're not talking about increasing the number of credits from 24 to 25. We're actually talking about adding a credit into, and it seems logical to me, but it may not be logical to everyone else, that would fall into what is now 2.5 for electives, and that would become a 3.5. And the reason I say it seems logical is that the language says that local boards shall offer, and then lists, and in the list is career and technical education, and driver's ed as electives. So it appears that that's a great place for this to go. I mean, I suppose it could also go up above, but it seems like there's it just seems like it's a more broad area under the electives category. When you look at the list of credential possibilities.
Yes, ma'am. So if you'll look on
I'm sorry, I didn't tell y'all
the
where I
second.
was.
No, because I see the list that he went through. So you're looking at 9 through 21 now down at the bottom. Where it starts out time allotment, credit coverage that we did at driver's
No,
ed.
ma'am, I'm actually 2 pages back. I
okay.
guess my mind works differently. I'm just kind of thinking, okay, let's say we do this, where does it go?
So
Where does it belong in the
if you look at the chart,
requirements for
yes, ma'am.
graduation?
So if you look at that chart that starts on the first page and goes over the second page that outlines the 24 credits.
Credits.
Right, okay, the top. The
Yes,
4
ma'am.
used to be the 4x4. Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Still the 4x4. So if you, if they, sorry, take some water. So if they get an ACT, AP, so like if they take AP credit, that fits somewhere in their 4x4. So they get AP credit for social studies, let's say, or English language arts. The ACT is not a credit course. That's just a test, obviously, they take outside of credit. But let's say for the career tech completer pathway. So if you look on that second page, next to last box, it says career and technical education and or foreign language and or arts, 3 credits. So if they take all 3 in career tech, and if they're all 3 in the same field, then that counts. That would be completer status, and they would be CCR. Now, how that let's say they, the reason credits are so hard, because we require 24 laid out, and most students can earn up to 28. 7-period day, so they earn 4 years. Well, let's say I take ag my first year, but I didn't like ag. So my second year I take welding. Now to get a completer status, I have to have 3 in welding. So that ag didn't count. It counts as a credit, but it becomes an elective credit because I didn't,
Stay in the same.
I didn't stay in it. Which is why it's important for us to start with the 8th graders making a 4-year plan and try to avoid as many of those as possible. If they jump around, and let's say they take 4 different career tech courses, but they never take, they're in all different fields, then they still get credit for those, and they would complete these 3 required credits to graduate, but they would not have CCR status. They might still get it under work keys, they might get it under dual enrollment. One of those might have been a dual enrollment class. This is a lot of work for counselors to keep up with because there are so many ways. But to get that completer status, like Ms. West points out, it'd have to be 3 in a sequence. Now, let's say that child likes art, and they're taking, they take 2 art classes, or they take 2 foreign language classes, or they take 2 art and 2 foreign language. They can get their 3 credits that way. They can then use their 2.5 electives plus the 4 we don't line out to do career tech, and they can still get their career tech courses and their art and their foreign language. But here's the biggest problem in running a high school. Well, I shouldn't say that because there are a lot of problems in running a high school. This is the biggest problem with credit in a high school, and there are other high school people out there who can help me with this. There is this thing in Alabama called football. And
other sports.
Or other sports. I was about to go there.
The World Games.
So
And anybody that gets involved in travel ball or have children, y'all are in for a new treat.
So most of our coaches like for their students to take a PE every year. Football or volleyball, whatever. They like for students to do that if they can. We only require 1 PE course. But if I take a PE course every year, whether that's weightlifting or whatever, then that is 3 of my 4 of the 4 credits I can kind of play around with. That's 3 of them. If they play a sport and they have to travel very far to a regional career tech center, that travel sometimes costs them 1 period because of the bus ride there and back. And so one of the things that has made it really difficult since we went to the 4x4, which has been a long time ago, is that it was very difficult. It's been, yes. But when we went to the 4x4, we required 2 extra credits because we had previously not required 4 in math or 4 in science, and maybe not 4 in social studies, I think. We required 4 in English. You had to take English every year. But when we required those extra courses, it hurt a lot of our regional career tech centers because of that travel time, and students had to choose between athletics or career tech. Now, a lot of that's been worked out through the years. The career tech centers have adjusted, but some of them never recovered from that. Some of them closed. We have one that we're reopening this year. It's been closed for several years. It's reopening, and they're trying to work on that schedule. But that is you have to add in travel time for these regional centers. But the equipment is so expensive, as y'all know. I think I've given this example. I went to Etowah County, and they have they were buying 1 piece of equipment that probably 15 students use it, but it costs $250,000 to replace. And you can't put one of those at every high school, so they can only offer it at the regional center. so machining equipment, computer-based, you have to be able to computer program to do this this high-tech machining that they use at auto manufacturing plants. But it makes it challenging, because when the day I visited, I talked to some of the students if they played ball, and several of them did, but it made it very, very tight scheduling that they could come take this machining class, also do what they need to do with their other credits and get back. So it is tight, and I appreciate what Dr. McCarty and the others of you have done, and I think you need to talk to superintendents and career tech directors and principals about this and what the challenges would be. We can definitely ask the legislature for more money. I think they would be supportive of this move. I haven't talked to any of them except Representative Collins, because she was interested in changing the weight on the report card. If I can address that for a second, that's a problem because the federal law says that the primary weight on the report card has to be at what they call an academic measure. And CCR is not considered an academic measure by the U.S. Department of Ed. Graduation rate is, and graduation rate is our main, it's the center of our high school accountability piece, is graduation rate. And they will not let us flip that and say we're going to make CCR a higher weight than graduation. They just won't. It's got graduation rate is it. If we had a high school graduation exam, then that could be our academic indicator. But CCR is not a primary academic indicator. Though most states are doing some form of CCR like we are, but it doesn't replace graduation rate.
Dr. Mackey, with the block schedules, in many schools actually you can earn 8 credit units a year.
Yes, sir.
Has been the answer in my area to the Career Tech Center, because that accommodates transportation. Would you speak to that? Because you talk about the 28 when really it can be 32.
It can be 32.
Drastic difference.
Yeah. Yes, sir. So they can go to 32 if they do block scheduling. It's a double-edged sword, because they can, so a student then can earn their, say, 3 career tech courses in 3 semesters. So you get full credit per semester. A lot of, again, it comes back like your athletics. If they want you to have a PE each semester, then it needs 8 courses instead of 4. But some of them have been able to deal with that.
Where I do it, you do semester, 4 credit units a semester.
Right.
So,
if you had a PE each semester,
which is the
The
half
next
unit
2.
each semester. Oh yeah, 2 blocks.
do 2 blocks, yes, sir. So 2 blocks in the year, though,
That's correct.
which only leaves you 6 blocks.
Many schools still
it
do
depends.
the block
Block
schedule.
schedule?
Yeah, I know there are variations all over the place, but they ran into the problems like you're talking about, and actually the retention from the academic standpoint also became a problem in many areas. It was ideal for CTE, but it was problematic for some academic.
I couldn't tell you the number. A lot of them have gone back. There are fewer block schedules than there were
A lot.
10 years ago.
A lot.
Because of those reasons, the academic retention, you could go a year without having a math course, for instance. And also teachers, because as Dr. Reynolds mentions, when you go from offering 7 options a year to 8, you have to have extra teachers to do that too, and some folks said they couldn't afford it. But we do still have them doing it, sorry.
In the large schools though, you can offer a lot of mini courses.
Right.
A school the size of Bob Jones or Grissom, they use that for diversity. You take a lot of you can take a lot more foreign language, you can take a lot more dual enrollment classes because of that capacity.
Right.
The 2 blocks. And I suffered both ways, into it and out of it. But
it's
it is a 2-edged sword, like you said.
Well, you said that.
I said that.
Yeah, but the problem is you have to look at, there's no probably no ideal, but if you have an area where CTE is really strong, I would say that actually might help. I know in St. Clair County, when it was in my district, we had a really dedicated group of people, but St. Clair County is somewhat large and they were all using the same, or trying to. But then they branched out some of those courses that you were talking about with CTE. We were able to work out at that time where math courses, for those students who were still focused more on the academic part of it, they could adjust it so that they took a math course that qualified for a CTE, but it also took care of whatever it was that they were trying to take care of in the 4x4. But you're right, locals became even more creative. A lot of people, because it was the new thing across the country, bought into the block scheduling, and then they realized, because it had not been used very many, I mean, it was used, but not for a long time. And then they started experiencing all these problems that you're referring to. And I don't know that there are a lot of problems with the block. I never was a huge advocate, and probably a lot of people, didn't like that, but then people started transitioning back.
Dr. Mackey, I'm all for career tech, but I'm concerned about how this will affect our fine arts a lot. Yeah.
Well, it's a very good question. And I think it's a good concern. So one of the things that we have mentioned, it's outside of career tech. We've talked internally about if a person takes 3 fine arts courses, is there a way to tie a credential to that? Now, there's not one right now, but that makes sense, that if a person's really interested in art and say they took art every year, just like taking ag every year, could they get credit for that? I mean, you could do that. You could add that on here. I don't know.
Is graphic design one of those AAACP
Oh, yeah.
indicators?
Yeah, there are some that would work.
That's good.
We could do that.
There's none for music, I don't think. There may be some in music, like music engineering, but like band. That's the question that's come to me. If a person takes band 4 years and say they want to go to college to be a musician or a band director, or not go to a conservatory or whatever, how do we count that? We don't have a way to count that. It's a good question.
Is it PE or
You could send them up to Muscle
It could
Shoals,
be PE or
and they could,
That's the band.
bring back the music industry up there.
But it doesn't get CCR. They can get PE credit for it, yes.
Right.
Yeah, we do let people use bands
Band,
to
yeah.
satisfy their PE credit,
Yes.
marching band. But the CCR part, there's not a CCR pathway that ties to like marching band like there is for welding.
So we don't really recognize fine arts as an occupation, then, do we?
I don't know if I'd go that far.
Well, I mean, if it's not a CCR career, there are folks that graduate that have left us, my high school, and gone, and the next job they're at Broadway.
Right.
But they're not CCR. But really, they're doing a hell of a lot better than some of the others that are mathematicians. So we're really technically not recognizing the arts as an occupation. We either are or we are not. But what we're doing, we're really not, are we?
We're not on that, no. Because that completer status and it's all tied to career tech courses, one of the 16 clusters in career tech.
It's because that's what we
That's a good
define
point.
it as.
But
We
do
could-
you have to graduate people who, that's my career? Because if you ask any freshmen, they think they want to be something. But those who had a very strong foundation academically and through the arts, and they've had a school that is enriched in so many different ways, their path is not narrow. It actually gives them so many opportunities, and I would much prefer to have many opportunities for a child. Right now, they've become so restrictive in so many areas that they don't have the opportunity for arts, which actually enhances academics, which actually, you start going down that list, but it all works together. And I was blessed with that at Jeff Davis, where we had so many different opportunities, but there are schools that don't have any arts.
So one of the ways that we do address art, so we have IB art programs. I don't know how many are around the state, but I mean, I know several that have taken IB art. There's a,
Define that, I'm
I
sorry.
didn't say, I said IB, I meant AP. So there's an advanced placement art, there's an art appreciation, and an art, kind of art practice. So there are a couple of AP art options. There's also some dual enrollment opportunities with arts out there. And then, of course, realize that those students who take arts can also, they may qualify under ACT or under the work keys. I mean, there are other ways to do it outside of career tech. But, I mean, there's no question that this would probably drive more students into career tech. I think it would, because you talk about incentives, you'd have principals now trying to figure out, okay, my 20% that aren't earning a CCR, where could they best earn it? Well, again, their students, they probably already have their academic path. They're students who are working on ACT. Now, they might put in an ACT prep course. They might do something to raise their ACT preparedness level, but there's going to be a ceiling on that. But they can look at work keys. If I were a principal, I'd be offering work keys in early high school and then using that as a pathway. I would be looking for any career tech opportunities that I could expand maybe. So if if all I have are the traditional career tech, kind of welding, those sort of things, well, there's robotics. There's, we've got aquatics. We've got all these different areas. Are there other areas I could add that would be of more interest maybe to a wider group of students? Dual enrollment. But AP is a big one. Because a lot of our high schools don't offer AP at all. And they could say offer an AP arts course, offer AP English, those kind of things to get those credits. So there's AP computer science.
Do we have a lot of, one of the things early on, you are still at the school setting, but one of the things that we fought for with the legislature was to get opportunities for those students, not only through dual enrollment. And I was actually the one who pushed the dual enrollment because they were doing it in Florida when I was first elected for the academic part of it. And it's in the media, so I did it. But there were others, how can you say no to something like that? But the problem was trying to get some of the two-year colleges to buy into it. And then even more of a problem, trying to get the superintendents to buy into it. And I understand all of the reasons. But when you start looking at AP, that was really the reason why we first looked at dual enrollment. And then we came up with the technology that would provide those courses in Randolph County or in other areas where they may not have access to it. And I don't hear as much about that anymore. Are we doing that at all? If a child wants to become a physician, for example, it doesn't start when they go off to college. They start early. That foundation starts in elementary school. And they start taking all of those honors courses, and then they take all of the AP courses that they can. And a child is at a loss if they're in an area where they cannot do that, and if they're required for graduation list includes all these other things that take away from those opportunities. And I think that in trying to serve a lot of students, especially those who are in areas where they don't have as many opportunities, we need to start looking at that.
Could we get a
Next
report
month,
on
we should bring in, next month, we'll have Dr. Hoyle come and talk about the new career development model they've been working on. I know y'all looked at a draft of that, he and Laura Bailey, and they've been getting lots of input around the state. So next month, I will make that a priority to talk about that, because they do start in elementary school and thinking
If
about
you don't, you don't push. No, what I'm saying is you don't tell a child you're going to be a doctor. What you do is you provide those opportunities for that child.
Right.
You provide tougher science. You provide better math. You make it so that they enjoy a certain reach, but they have to be. If you're going into medicine, you've got to know sometimes there are a lot of things that are intertwined. You don't just say, I'm going to go in the career pathway and I'm going to go to a hospital, because for a student who wants to get into medical school eventually, they start early. And whether you're, any kind of medicine, whether it's, now you have to have a PharmD. And it's not an easy course, you've got to know a lot of chemistry, but it starts early. And that's where we don't provide those opportunities. It's great to have a strong career tech program. I've always supported it. And there are areas where we have actually strengthened it, even in the early days. But at the same time, the idea of education should be providing that strong foundation so that a child and the child's parents or guardians help make a decision. But those tools don't come after they graduate from high school, and you don't narrow the path. You don't send them to do Mrs. Fun in kindergarten where they go to the hospital and they pretend they're patient and all that kind of stuff. And it's really cute and it's a great way to introduce them. But that's not necessarily, I have to say, I don't want a high school student doing too much with me if I'm in the hospital. They can learn, but they're also better off trying to learn some more advanced math, taking more AP courses, because that's the path that will eventually help them graduate from college with a 4.0, make them more competitive to get into whatever they want to do. And I'm not hearing that. And I know that's not the majority of students, but why not? Why not look at it that way?
We definitely have grown our AP programs. Y'all be okay. I'm gonna let Mark say something about AP because we work with A+, obviously, to push out our AP. That's a big part of our strategy.
And Ms. Bell, I couldn't agree more. And the only reason I'd ask is that, two things. One, now that the way that A+ College Ready works with the program that y'all fund is that it begins in middle school. So when the high school provides and that middle school support, all those middle school teachers get trained on that curriculum to raise that rigor. So you've got a wider pipeline of students that are prepared for advanced coursework. And that's available to any school that wants to participate in the state, any high school and middle school. The other thing, though, that started in the last couple of years is at the AP level. One, at the request of the department, we do now support 2D art. So that is available at the advanced placement level and would certainly be supported under this proposal. And there is also now an individual teacher program. So instead of the entire school becoming an A+ College Ready school, you can have one AP teacher that is supported. So if a school wanted to add under this proposal a 2D art or one English AP or one AP computer science, that could be added just with that single teacher and not the whole school having to get on board. So just a couple of options there.
Well, and that helps in rural areas where if they only knew, that's the thing, it's there, but we don't let them know, or at least they don't find out. And that's what that would take care of a lot of these math and science teachers. It's not ideal. I do remember in the early days, we would have a class, and you remember this, I'm sure, because you were here at that time. We would have a class in Homewood talking to a class in Perry County, and they would have class together. But it's one of those things that we have it. Again, don't limit students. Open the doors. If they don't like it, that's part of personal responsibility, but you can help push them. And why not tell teachers? If they don't have those teachers physically there, again, it's not the best. I prefer a real person and a teacher, but it does open those doors. And actually, they ended up, some of those classes, and you know this, coming together and meeting each other. And it just, so when we talk about the CCR, let's not restrict it to a certain, one pathway. And that's one thing that concerns me with our graduation requirements. They are becoming even more restrictive. And anyway, having seen the strength of a really solid education and what is required to get someone there, we can do it. Don't close those doors.
Right. And you see that you've got a lot of, I always like using my own children for example, so since they're used to being called out publicly. So Chris just finished. He was in AP courses. The teachers were A+ AP college trained. In Pike Road. But he finished actually. He was a CTE completer, and he made an ACT score that credentialed him and an AP score. I was actually looking. I did this on purpose the other day to see how many would he have checked? So he checked 3 of the boxes. We have a lot of students that check multiple boxes. The problem is we have students that don't check any of the 9 boxes. And the reason for requiring it would be to say, we think our graduates ought to check at least one of these 9 boxes. And so then we have to support them for that. I think I may have interrupted Dr. Chestnut was about to say something, but
Well, I'm just thinking out loud. My question, and ideally what we're saying is just awesome. But I'm also visualizing schools that don't have these options. So how can we ensure that every child in Alabama has the opportunity to experience what we're talking about? Especially since we're talking about requiring it.
Dr.
But it's an
Chestnut,
option, it's an
Right,
option.
but-
It doesn't have to be.
I'd like
But
a
it needs to
report
be.
that shows where we are right now, how many schools have the three CTE courses in the same subject area, and a report with AP classes that shows which schools offer AP courses, and maybe specify the arts, so make sure that how many high schools offer that, or middle schools, whoever does. But to see, I think we need to know where we are
I would
and
love
what
to
we're
see
looking
it.
at.
I would
And
love
then
to
we
see
can
it.
see what the gap is, what we need to do to address those issues, so that when we require this, it's a reasonable requirement.
Exactly.
I'd like
'Cause
to
I
add
think-
one more point to that report, while I've got it in my head, is, once we know those numbers, how many access courses are available, because that doesn't cost the local school district in any particular rural county to have access available in order to check that box, if we require it. Could the student get it through access? And I know that's not the greatest in the world, but there are
It's good
children
to
that
know
take
that.
Latin through
Right.
access, or they take other courses through
I
access.
think I would have preferred to take Latin instead of Sister Mary Jane. At least she would have been far away. But you never forgot her.
okay.
But in line with that, I think that's great, but then beyond that, the access courses, yes. But then to make sure that the area has the
There you
infrastructure
go.
for the access courses.
Right,
We can
sure,
offer
I
them, but if we don't
realize.
have, that's one thing. But then I was also
Classroom.
thinking about, when you talk about the advanced placement courses, then having even either the teachers on staff, they have to be trained, they have to be willing to be trained to teach the courses, or knowing that there's a partner school that's gonna provide it for the students. So there are things beyond us just saying we want to have them. That's why I was raising my hand to say, so we have to look. We'll look at the numbers,
I
but
wanna see
then
what they are
access
today.
courses, I think that's great. But then is the infrastructure there, and then beyond that, once we say we can provide them in the area, how many then of our teachers on staff would then want to, or your teachers on staff would want to be providers? And then if not, do we have the two-year college or the colleges in the area to provide? So I'm just saying, those are variables that we have to consider.
Mark, do you have any information on that? Because I know that was one of the things that 10 years ago, we were talking about access and having technology, but it has come a long way since then.
One of the big differences between now, and I'm not the expert now, but the difference between then and now was then you did have video conferencing, and so there was more of that face-to-face options, and that has now totally gone to completely online, as I understand it. And so it is a little bit different in that sense, and so it's much more one-on-one versus a whole class together in one course, which is some of the ones that you saw in person.
So today, all 3 of mine took access courses at some point, and they sat with a facilitator in the room that monitored them, but a live teacher taught. You're saying that today's access looks different?
I don't know the answer to that
Yeah.
question.
So many of the access courses, yes, have gone online, so that they're, so you can take them like at any time. It's opened it up a lot, because it used to be that a lot of the access courses had a live instructor who was not with you. But if the live instructor was teaching between 9:30 and 10:30, you had to arrange your schedule to make sure your students were online between 9:30 and 10:30. Most of them now are they're like recorded, they're recorded pieces you watch, they're interactive, and so you can take them based on your high school schedule. A lot of them are still offered in an access lab because there's a facilitator in there to facilitate the session. But we do have some that take them outside of facilitation now so that you know they can't work anything else out, and so everybody else is taking an access course in health in third period, but I'm taking it in seventh period. I'll get Joe Goebel. Joe is our access person. Actually, we're losing Joe, I think, back to one of our counties. Has stolen away from us, but we'll get somebody to come talk about access in particular, because those would be the most common access course is health, and that's because there's a dearth of health teachers, and the online course is really good, and so a lot of our schools, even if they have a certified health teacher, have gone to using access instead. A lot of people use it for catch up too, or if a student say gets, they move in and they're short a credit, then they take credits that way, credit recovery. But we do have people that just take, as you said, I don't know about Latin for sure if it's on there, but a lot of foreign languages on there. A lot of people use it for foreign language. And those do count for credits. They don't necessarily count for a CCR because you'd have to have, so the access is not dual enrollment. So they don't have that. And we don't have any dual enrollment courses, and we do have some career tech, but I don't know that we have a whole sequence where they could take all three.
And I guess that's my question. What courses are CCR count for CCR that can be taught through access? Does that make sense?
Yep. Yes, ma'am. What courses count for CCR that could be taught through access?
Because I think that could reach students maybe that don't necessarily have greatest amount of resources in their school building.
Going back to the arts for just a minute, I know in my district, you just need a person who is willing to work really hard and work with the Alabama Council on the Arts and Arts Alliance. We had a lady come in, we had no art in Hamilton schools. We had a lady come in whose granddaughter was starting to one of the Hamilton schools. She wrote a grant. She worked through Arts Alliance and Alabama Council on the Arts. Now a lot of those are matching grants. The school didn't have the money to do the match, so they raised money. The parents and this lady headed it up. She did amazing things. They raised money. They got the money. They got the grant. The teacher who came in and taught art was not a certified teacher, but an artist. And we've had a professional photographer come in and teach courses. We've had a muralist, a well-known Southern muralist come in, and that's commercial art. I'm trying to figure out how to bend the arts into career tech.
Yeah.
You're working it.
Yes, photographer, but it costs the system nothing. Now, the teacher's not certified. The teacher's just a professional artist. And I was able to find a lot of artists who were willing to come in. And the problem is none of them wanted to stay very long because they're professional artists and they want to go back out and do their art. But they would come in for maybe one course. And that was really exciting. Kids loved it. They also have a program called Artist in Residency. Yes, where the Alabama Council on the Arts will give you grant money to bring artists into the school, and you'll have an artist in residency in the school. So really, it doesn't cost a lot to have an art program if you just work with the agencies.
And art can be drama, not just.
Yes.
And we have.
Oh,
dance.
Yes, dance,
We have a
drama,
program
poetry.
out of Huntsville where they do performing arts and plays and solicit outlying school systems that may not have a program for those students to participate in those programs. they're sometimes almost like athletic programs or after school. You know, they're just practice, they don't practice during the regular day. And that's why those programs sometimes perform better than our football team.
Could the
Not to be
extended learning
sarcastic, but-
opportunity that we voted on earlier, could it come in and provide additional opportunities
And
for
nonprofit.
students to make up for the lack that may exist? Would
They-
that fall, could that be an option?
They could, yes ma'am, with those ELOs could come in and offer, like, especially with arts, if you had an organization that was willing to do it, that's a great opportunity. As I said this morning, most of the ones we've heard from have been religious institutions. They've not been the kinds of things y'all are talking about. But I'm not saying they're not out there. Now that the policy's in place, they can come along. There's some states, Arizona in particular, has done a lot of that with ELOs. It's just become a thing where they have a lot of community organizations that now do arts and they get credit for it. They were already doing like after-school programs, but now they can get credit for those. And with what you passed this morning, we could too. We have to now develop those organizations. The expertise is a big part of it. Finding artists and just like finding teachers, and career tech teachers are also very hard to come by. That's been one of our biggest struggles with adding programs is finding teachers.
When we basically turned over the arts program to the Arts Council, remember when we did that? The art course of study and, yeah. That would be your ideal resource right there because they're not only statewide, but they actually have access to federal grant money and state grant money, and they also have a love of the arts and they're everything that you've already mentioned as far as dance, theater, music. I mean, it's all inclusive. But we basically, Tommy Weiss was here and he met with them. A lot of people from Shakespeare, some people I've known since I was this tall. Randy Foster's one, Randy, but they're still very much involved. But that would be your go-to group because they have branched out statewide. At the time, one of my friends that I grew up with, Sarah Bach, was here in our department, and she was actually a Disney awardee for the arts. And we can benefit from what has already been done. But I know Yvette, I think we were the only two.
When they came to present.
Yeah, and so, but that's already in place. I've duplicated if you've got that team. And, they're well connected with the Musher Shoals Group. They're trying to help revive all of that. And they're also involved in all of the awards that are being handed out that you see at these big get-togethers we didn't have for I don't know how many years, but now they're very much involved. So I think the arts would be taken care of if we go to that source that we already have.
Yeah, and we did give out several $100,000 in arts grants this year to establish programs
It's there.
and it's good to get together with people, had an in-person meeting up in Birmingham to recognize some of those, so that was good. In Hoover, at the Ross Bridge anyway. I'm trying to think when that was, but Andy Meadows does that for us, and then of course works with Elliot and I, the Arts Council, so I'll talk to Andy about that.
He'd be a good one. Andy's been good friends with my brothers who are very much involved in, if you're familiar with the mama group here, the bands and so forth that they use. And I mean, he's multitasked as far as arts, as you probably know by now. I've known him since.
I was privileged to work with Jerry Brown, who was my neighbor, passed away several years ago, but ninth generation potter, whose work is in the Smithsonian. So he came when I was at Bevel. He came to Bevel and helped us with pottery classes, and he would actually let you make a pot, and he would hold your hands, and then he would sign it, and you could sign it. So those are now very collectible. That's another good thing about working with artists is
See you on
get some of
Antique
their stuff.
Roadshow. I'll see you on Antique Roadshow.
It goes up in value. It's a great investment.
So what I will do, let me, of course,
And that's CTE pottery.
Yeah, it could very well be. I'm gonna talk to Hull. What I will have Dr. Hull come next month and talk about the career development model, because that goes all the way down into elementary school, and not choosing a person's pathway, but making sure they have more options and they have more things to think about. I will also, we'll get the information on access and AP, and I'll have, next month, we won't have a conference going on, and so I'll have Hull and Angela and Andy, all these folks can be here too to help discuss this. I would ask you again, in the meantime though, also talk to your superintendents and principals. What would barriers be? Dr. Chestnut, I've talked to a couple in your area because they have low CCR rates and said, and that's where I got, well, you know, we've not focused on that. Not because they don't care, because they've had lots of other stuff to focus on. But how do we, but you know, they were not opposed to this, just to give me, don't do it to me and say it's going to apply to next year's senior class, which is not even be legal, but give me time to do it. And then we could, so what I'm hearing, I think, is that you do not want to vote on this next month. You want to have another work session, some more information, and then we can come back and possibly talk later. I do think, and we need to do it right, however much time that takes. There are other things in here that y'all think we want to look at with graduation requirements. But I would caution us all this. If we were to say, still be talking about this in December, we might be looking at the graduation class of 29, not 28.
Right.
And I mean, just to be fair, because our counselors need to develop 4-year plans. And we can't give it to them, say, next February and expect them to have it in the next year's plan. And I don't think we're in a hurry now, but I think we do have to think about if this is something we want to do.
Well, Dr. Mackey, usually in August,
pull that way.
we start talking about the budget, our budget request, and if some of these issues would require additional funding, we would want to put that, I would think, in our budget request. So I agree. I think we want to discuss it in detail and get the facts, but also not dally too long.
So we'll come back next month with a deeper discussion. I do think, I mean, I've not talked to, you know, you said you talked to everybody or reached out to somebody in every county. I've not talked to anybody that was opposed, that just said, I don't think that's a good idea. So I think there's strong support for it. They just want to make sure we don't pass a rule and then leave them out to dry without the supports to implement. So I would hope maybe we could discuss next month, vote in September, still knowing we're talking about the class of 28. So there's lots of work that can be done between now and then.
So we could do it as late as October then, Dr. Mackey.
What's that?
You said September, but in order to do it in the scheme that we're talking about, we could still act on it as late as October.
We could, yes, sir.
I'm trying to look at the outer limits of that expectation. I wouldn't want to wait till November.
I agree with you, yes, sir.
So October would be the outside if we have no more progress next month than we had this month. Especially when we're dealing with budget situations.
Yeah, really good conversation. So the other item that I have is just the electronic board packets that we talked about last month. Again, everybody's out except Brandon Payne, who's here that can help with that. So we've looked at our options. And he almost didn't make it today. His car broke down on the way back from Mobile, and we had to send somebody to pick him up.
I could have picked you up on the way up.
That's true. I remember that. I was way early, so I could have waited.
Jason was already giving us advice before you showed up. So.
Well, good. So the electronic packets, we just want to, we know there's one particular vendor that a lot of you have used before. So I just asked our procurement folks, look at what all we need to do. Do we need to do an RFP? There are state lists we can buy off of. Is there something on the state list? Yes.
We do have an update. I think.
Oh, you do? Good. They've got an update, so let me be quiet.
I think Brandon's office is generating an A2, a purchase order with that assembly software, which was created, I guess, by the Georgia Association of School Boards. It's used by quite a lot of other school boards in the state. So they're currently, from what I understand, working on that. And that just kind of,
Good.
it's an update from like this morning.
Yeah,
or
well,
like
about
lunch.
30 minutes ago, Cindy procurement she's taking stuff to Lily for me, for us to
Okay.
create day two, so we should be close.
That sounds great.
So what does that mean? When are we gonna get our database?
But what exactly are you, when you discuss this and you're talking about RFPs, what is it involved? Because, you know, with a lot of this technology, having been through about 3 different phases, and each time realizing that there are potential problems associated with it you may not be aware of if you, I've always turned mine back in. I think from a legal standpoint, it's certainly to my advantage, and you can make that decision on your own. But that's why I'd just like to know exactly what are you referring to? Are you talking about giving everybody a computer?
We would get a device for everybody. Assembly
I don't
is
want
an
one.
online digital.
We also agreed
Repository.
that every person could choose to not to.
Yeah, and
When
that's, I
you
don't
were,
want one.
you were
I'm just
not
letting
here,
you know
but
so don't
you
count
listened on the line, you should have, we said that this would be an individual option to opt in.
I
or opt out.
I've listened to it
I
2
said,
or 3
but you
times.
said you didn't want any, that was already gonna be provided.
I know, but I'm just telling him, don't count on it, because I haven't talked to him about it.
Okay.
So the timeline would be, so it sounds like they worked through the procurement stuff. So it could probably be procured by next month, but now we'd have to get with y'all about getting your devices. Some of you use Assembly, so it works best, I'm told, on an iPad. I don't think it has to be on an iPad. I think, and y'all might not need to be trained, but I know Nora wants to go through the training before we do the uploading, so I would target that maybe the September board meeting, we could have the devices and work through using them. If people still want paper copies, we'll obviously do paper copies. I think I mentioned I serve on the RSA board, and that's what we do. We use a different device, a different software called Director Point, and we can get it electronically, and we can get it paper, whichever one we want. But they do but the email comes out, there still can be an email. Now, I don't want to overload Nora because she's got to do, she's got to learn the system too, but I think it will make her life a lot easier as well. But I would think September.
Better also. I believe the training's gotten a lot better. And there's some modules you can practice with the device, and so I think it's improved greatly.
Now, are you talking about emails, like different email addresses as well for board members, or just
No,
sending it to us?
I think it's your package electronically, so you can underline, add sticky note questions, simply to help cut down on the amount of paper. And you can also search. You can also search very quickly for items, so I could look back and see exactly what we covered a year ago without having to go to a paper file and try to find exactly what Dr. Mackey put in an open meeting a year ago. It's
Very user-friendly.
user-friendly, and I use something like that professionally, so I think it will improve our process.
And if we have our own iPad, does that not, can't we use the Assembly on our own device? Does, right,
Oh yeah, you can log in.
yeah, that's what I thought,
But
because that's what I did when I was at AASB, just use my own device, so.
So I use what I have to do when I go to those RSA meetings. I have to take, they don't provide us an iPad. They would. I'd have never asked for one. They just take my own.
You got enough money.
Use my own personal. But we would definitely get you a device. That's not an issue. We'll let Brandon get with you about what. Yes, sir.
That was what I was gonna say. I can send an email to everybody and they can send back if they want an iPad or if they prefer a laptop. And we can get those ordered, or if they don't want one, they can just simply tell me they don't want one. Or if they intend to use their personal and don't want one, whatever the case may be. That'd just be, that would be the easiest way for me to collect that, so we can get it all on one purchase order as to what we're doing. So, you know, it'll be a basic PC laptop if we get one of those. If that's what you want, and, or if you want the iPad, we'll do that. So,
Okay.
I'll just send that email out either later this evening or tomorrow, and y'all can respond when you have time.
Sounds good, thank you.
Very good.
And as we agreed, if you want paper, you don't want to change, that's fine. Have at it.
So we'll target September to have that, and we'll see what the training looks like. I had hoped we might do the training somehow around the retreat even, but I don't know if everything will be ready by then, and we might not be able to do that. The training may be, y'all know better than I, the training might be online now. I don't know if
Oh,
it has to be in
is.
person or for
It is
training or not.
It's easy.
It's very easy.
Okay.
Actually, my idea, well, the concept came from watching Dr. Chestnut every meeting do it, and having seen Nora haul those big old books around all the time. In consideration for that, and I think that's why we discussed it last meeting, the options and the opportunities. And Dr. Chestnut, you probably would just use your own device,
Okay.
which I've watched her be more efficient than me because she had it all mine.
Assembly is a lot more user friendly. I just created my own, files so that I could keep everything electronically.
I just wanted to recognize you for
I
having
appreciate
seen you
that,
do it
Dr.
already.
Reynolds. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to having it.
Me too.
And just for the record, I don't mind it. I use that when I go to meetings because everything is done from an app, which is like Socio. There are a bunch of different apps that you can use. But I just like paper when I'm trying to do something that's more in depth. And I'll use my own. It's not that I don't want to do it.
There's no sense of a requirement for anybody. Everybody does their own
I
thing.
get
We're
it.
all elected independently.
Okay.
So, so that is that on the, on what we've got. Now, it's a very short, it's a rubber band from today because it's a very short work agenda next month. Typically, August kind of is because usually July is like this. It's
We
just
will
hard.
bring
There's
back
not a
the
lot.
charter school nominations.
But
So
we can bring back the
we
charter
will
school
bring the
nominations.
charter school nominations back.
You want to bring those back next
We
month?
didn't add it this one because of
Yeah.
your schedule, but we will add that back, and the charter school nominations will
So
come
we
back.
have two coming up that we have live. One, or two sets from the pro tem of the Senate, Senator Reid, and from the Speaker, Speaker McCutcheon.
And there's some, when I talked to somebody, there was one expired position. Somebody told me that was because of the minority leader, through the majority leader, nominated somebody. And that was a position for a person that lives in Huntsville. It expired in 21. So we still need to evaluate that and work with the speaker to determine if he or the minority leader are gonna make that nomination, because we don't have any of those.
We'll get with the Speaker about if there's.
I talked with Mr. Markham about that.
Okay. So that'll be good to come back next month. The other item, I know we've got questions still, but we do have the one award for next month, which is the
Yes.
Christy Meade for the Robert L. Morton Award, and that goes to a CFO every year, and she should be here. I think she'll be here in person, so that'd be great to do. She's a really good one too. It's a very, very distinguished award. Okay, Dr. Reynolds.
Any questions on item 4?
Item 4 is what Dr. Reynolds had asked us about, and that is to add in a couple of things. So if you look at, if you look behind 4, it's to add in a board member reports section. And that would come right after new business and right before the executive report and the superintendent's report. executive report, you remember, we don't always have an executive report, but it's required to be in there because there are times when we have to make public announcements that are read into the record, especially dealing sometimes with taxes. And so there are certain things out there that have to be read into the record of a state board meeting, and that's why executive report's in there, and that's why most months I say there's not one this month. We only do it if there's a legal requirement to do it. But in the superintendent's report, of course, is always a good news story. The governor asked me to, over a year ago, to start expanding that and bringing people in. Because y'all remember I used to just tell the stories, and she said, I'd like people to come in. And so we've had, ever since then, this last year at least, since COVID's ended, we've brought somebody every month. We've got some really good ones. Mr. Markham works on those for me. Of course, I don't know if you can top having the CEO of ACT come give you an award.
So nice. And to see Tony.
But we've got some more really good events lined up for the fall. Like that's how many of you got to meet Todd Walker with the Academy for Craft Training, and then some of you followed up and went there. So it's been really good. But this would be board member reports. I assume that would be y'all kind of talking about maybe schools you visited, things you've done in your district. It'll be up to you.
That's optional. People can just say no report. Just put an item on the agenda, not necessarily that everybody reports or has to report or expected to report.
We would, the other change on here, and that we put in because we just to look at updating, but if you go backwards a page, the board may meet by electronic means consistent with section 3625.5.1. So that's up to you, but the legislature this year, so pre-COVID, there were a lot of restrictions on who could and who could not have participate by electronic means. Because so many boards had to meet, as we did during COVID, with electronic means, the legislature updated that, and they now allow the state board, among many other agencies, to have meetings by electronic means. There are stipulations on it, like having I think Jason, there has to be a quorum in person.
I think at least three have to be in person.
At least three in person. So
and
some
obviously
of
you have to post everything like you normally do, all the posting requirements.
But it would allow you, if you wanted to, right now, as you know, if one of you's out of town, you can listen, but you can't participate and vote in a meeting. If we make this change, the legislature has allowed you to do that. You would be allowed to do that, subject to certain stipulations. Now, it'll have to be, everybody couldn't do it because we have to have a quorum or the majority of a quorum, which is 3 of you, and it still have to be a duly called meeting and all that. But we went ahead and when we were making the one change Dr. Reynolds asked about and put that in because a couple of you have said during COVID, I wish we had this opportunity. And then the other one is the president or vice president can determine the means to transact business by electronic means if any all board rules or procedures in conflict. Jason must have written that. It's a little complicated for me. But the last piece of that, but not limited to the requirement for board members to vote by raised hand. So that's a rule that the board has, to vote by raised hand. You should, and what this basically is saying is that the presiding officer could waive that. It's very hard to do, as we learned during the COVID period. So, is that right, Jason? If I said that right, I may have said it wrong.
Just anything that's in conflict with meeting by electronic means. And obviously, like you said, if it's on video, sometimes it may be hard to see somebody's hand and that kind of thing. So when you're on a Zoom or something. So, and it's just temporarily for that meeting, that particular meeting.
And this is only proposed for, because it's not going to be done at the next meeting. It's
what we could do, this would be a rule change, so it'd have to be voted on. You'd have to vote on the intent to change the rule.
Right.
That's sit on the table for 45 days. So you could vote in August to put it out there for public comment, and then vote in October to make it a rule. And then the agenda would actually change in November. It takes a little time. We did look at, sometimes we pass an emergency rule, but there is a rule about emergency rules. There has to be some emergency. And there's really not an emergency, we couldn't really tie it to an emergency, so it would take some time to make it effective.
Don't we already have the opportunity to report at the end? I guess my biggest concern is that, and when I think about these things, I'm thinking about the future. I'm thinking about when, the reality is that I'm getting closer to that time when I may be laid to rest permanently, except for heaven. But I mean, the reality is you're not going to be here forever. So we're putting in place rules that will be here. Is it going to be potentially that old thing where she gives a report, he gives a report, she gives a report, and you feel like you have to give a report because your constituency may think that you don't care unless you give a little report, and we end up with a marathon meeting with everybody giving reports, and we all think it's wonderful, which it is. But from the standpoint of doing business, you can do a lot of business in a very short period of time without having constant reports. And it's a nice idea, but the reality is that it could turn into something that you didn't intend it to be.
I was gonna ask Dr. Reynolds that, because when you make the statement, I guess for clarification, and if you don't have a report, you don't have to make one.
No, I would never. I'm not intimidated by constituency.
I know, but
No,
I'm not talking about you.
but I'm saying when you made that statement, if I don't have anything, which, all of us can say something.
Sure.
But if everybody is saying something and the majority is, and you just sit there, then your people are saying,
Yeah.
well, doesn't she have anything to report? So that's what I'm saying. So
That's
is that
exactly what
we're
I'm trying to scenario.
Right, so I'm just
We've
asking.
been here for a while and we've
Right.
seen everything. And so it's,
And if 8 of us take 3 minutes, that's adding another almost half an hour.
yeah, but it could be more because you have to breathe and that kind of stuff.
Or some are more chatty
But the
than
other part
others.
of it is we need to also be really careful about this business with electronics because we had an excuse. And I was not here, but I watched you all. And I went back and I watched it again because there were parts I wanted to make sure I got it right. And so that was for my benefit. But you didn't need me on the other end driving along the highway and the internet going out because I didn't have great coverage. That's something I'd be really careful about. It sounds great, but in reality, if people want to get rid of the board, they don't see you and you don't have a presence, then the possibility, and again, I'm thinking down the road, the Charter Commission, for example, you know how many questions you receive. That's because they're sort of
Hard to find.
hidden, on
Not
purpose,
sort
maybe.
of. They are hidden.
Well, on purpose, maybe, but they
And
do
maybe your
electronic
chance to give a
meetings.
report like this on your reaction to charters or things that are being brought to you.
Well, my point is that we don't need to be like them. We need to be as public as possible because we represent the public. And that, I understand with COVID and those restrictions, but that's already there. You can have, set those limitations and the legislature's provided it. We just need to be really careful. You open that door and the floodgates it starts flowing and it never stops. And that's one thing you just have to be really careful about. And as a former reporter, I would take advantage of that. I'd also be very frustrated. Technology didn't work today, so you couldn't watch for part of it.
Well, and something you said sort of opened my eyes about our emails to each other. We've got to be very careful because it's a public record.
Don't do business by email. It's
Right. And I think sometimes you get into it without realizing, but we need to be very cautious. This is where we do our business, and
so when she says wow in a text message, she's okay. But if you start saying, I'd like to see it this way, that's when you get into the policy issue, it can, there's that line.
And Jason, is it appropriate to reply all? Like when
I
there's
guess
an
in what
email?
context?
I mean, it depends on the context and what the
Absolutely.
discussion is. I mean, I guess when I went through orientation, the warning was only rarely do you ever want
Because
to
you're
reply
engaging
all.
everybody,
Right,
and
right.
that's the problem.
Well,
And so
yeah, and I think
that's how I interpreted it.
And one thing you're not always aware of, like you don't know, you think you know to whom the email is going, but you never know.
somebody's blind copy or
Maggie
something.
finally taught me how you hit that little down thing and tells you all who's in there. And sometimes I go, whoa, there's a lot of people on here. So, you
And if it's
know,
blind copy,
blind copy, you don't know.
but it's
So-
still, you don't do business,
On
either
emails.
text or emails,
That's right.
period. And you
Well-
don't even do it on Facebook, don't have a conversation, if you have the world there. But beyond that, anytime, you know, we're really the ones that we have to be even more concerned about. But yes, don't enter.
Well, and another question
We haven't
Just
got
like
the
if you
board
reply,
question.
oh, happy birthday,
is-
obviously
That's good.
Oh,
Happy
yeah.
birthday.
but what about a public, when is
Yeah, I
it,
like that.
I think Stephanie, I think you taught me this, that if we receive an email with an attachment, or we get a hard copy of something, at that point, it's a public document.
Mhm.
Is that correct? Are there nuances
I mean,
to that?
Majority.
I'm gonna give the lawyer answer, it depends, I mean, it does, it really depends, it depends on facts and circumstances, it depends on the document, you know, because there are certain things that are exemptions to the public records law.
Well, how do
Trish
we
knows
know
that very
that?
Oh,
But how do we know that?
Attorney-client privilege, this is protecting, you know, and you put all of that, if you see his warnings on there, but that's one example.
But isn't it always better to assume
This is really
it's
about
gonna be a public
electronic,
record?
this is about meeting electronically, not
Right.
necessarily about emails, this is just giving us the conduit to do so. We're just basically attaching to the law and saying, hey, you know, okay, we want the ability to do that, and it has to be done at the call of the president, vice president.
No, yes, and I'm not referring to that. I was
Okay.
more general.
Okay, okay.
So
Because
it
we've been
depends on
getting-
if it's, so you can get documents that are like draft documents before they're public. You're gonna get one today. At the end of the day, you're gonna get some raw data. We're gonna give you ACAP data that are unverified.
How'd you know
They're
that?
unverified documents.
I know.
So they cannot be shared with the public. But you're not the public, you're the board, and so we're gonna give you the unverified data to take with you. They will become public, you know, but they're not, they're draft, they're unverified, that's the thing.
So the schools are still looking over.
That's right.
But make sure you put on there a message from Jason saying
It
this is
says
protected.
confidential, yes, ma'am.
Because
Confidential.
that's extremely important.
Yeah.
Because yet there are, and we had this with the ethics issue that,
We went through.
with a former board member, because once it was distributed to all of the board members, it was a public document. There was nothing in there that said, this is protected. And so when we have a discussion about, for example, what was voted on today, and people start sharing all of the input, you're meeting
Right.
electronically, and that just needs to stop. And, you notice I
It's
don't
a very good
respond.
point, and what we will do, and so like what you're gonna get today, your unverified data, is for your district only. So the whole board is not getting the same thing. You are only getting a draft for your district. And so, and it's marked confidential. Now, last month, we gave you a draft of the reading scores for your district, just your district. At 3 o'clock today, those will go live for the whole state. Not just your district, obviously the whole
Will you
state.
send us the link?
Yeah, that'll go out. Michael just has a press release to do. So those will go live, and we've notified superintendents that they'll go live. But they have been verified. Those are now verified data. So, you know, as soon as these get verified, they'll go live too. But we want to make sure, we want you to get them before the general public, obviously. But we also want local boards. Well, I want every local superintendent of the state to have a chance to share their information with their board before it gets out on the press too. I mean, I've been in that position. So that's why we give you data, but it's not public yet. But it will be public eventually. And Dr. McCarty, I think you're the one to ask. It is a very good question, and you're right. It needs to be marked that it's confidential, that it's unverified, so that you know, we want to give you clear direction so you don't accidentally say, well, I didn't realize I wasn't supposed to share that. So, but as much as we can, we want to give you information, obviously, ahead of time. Emails is a whole different, its own animal. And y'all know I try not to go back and forth on email, partially because it's just easier to talk to people too, one at a time. You lose a lot in email. But information-wise, you know, we have to share things that way. So if y'all wanna think about this too, again, none of this has to be done, but has to be done next month, but it could be on the call for next month to announce intent to adopt. But I'm hearing lots of questions, so if you wanna talk about it again next month, that's fine too.
That's my vote.
Mine is the way to.
Talk again.
Now, we can do 5.
Okay.
Christie, you said she's coming, right? So we can.
Yes,
talk about-
yes,
Of
yes,
course
we
we
do
don't
her.
leave
Yeah.
Christie. Why not?
We do her, and we'll bring the charter commission.
So I can bring balloons.
Right. We do her, we'll bring the charter commission nominees back. And there may be something else out there that needs to be voted on that's been brought up at a previous work session. That's not, everything's not here, because sometimes it's something we've announced the intent of a different rule, we have to come back and do the final vote. So there may be a few other things, but in general, it'll be a fairly short business meeting, which is good, I think, because that means I can bring in Dr. Hull and these other folks, and we can talk more deeply, spend time on access and on the CTE and their career development model and those kind of things, and not feel rushed about that. So Dr. Reynolds, I'm ready for board questions, I think. May have to go get a cup of coffee first. But
Well, we'll get a cup of coffee because you gotta take your appliance.
I have to take these things out of my mouth to drink coffee.
We'll start with board questions. Board questions?
I just have one.
Go ahead.
I promise, it's just one. But it has to do with something I've already asked. It has to do with the FAFSA, and I get the report from one of the committees in
Yes.
Washington,
You
and I
did. I
think
know
I
where
shared
you're
it.
going. You did share it,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I'd like to know if at all, since we mandate it, I don't know that there would be any liability because people choose if they can, they can get a waiver. So from a legal standpoint, we're probably safe. But from the fact that it was actually, what's a good term for it? Compromised.
Yeah.
And it's public knowledge. Did we have any cases, or can you check on that?
We have not been able, I don't mind trying to check again, but we did try to check. We were not able to verify that any of the data leak affected anybody from Alabama. But as you know, the feds are we don't control, we've talked about, and I know you know this, but none of that FAFSA information comes to us. It goes straight to U.S. Department of Ed. And so
But we mandate it as part of.
so we don't, right, but we don't know what, we know who turns it in. We don't know what they turn in. And so, no, we're not able to verify if any Alabamians were involved in the data leak. It's my understanding if they were, they should have gotten direct notice from the U.S. Department of Education. So for instance, one more time, I'll try to make it the last time, but no promises. Use Chris as an example, because I've mentioned he's a senior, we had to do the FAFSA, and we've not been notified. So we are assuming that our information is not a part of the data leak, because I've been in a data leak before with the Department of Labor, so where somebody stole my ID and tried to turn it in for unemployment. And,
I'm still drawing the check.
Yeah, you're still drawing my check. I've counted them. That happened during COVID. I have gotten 14 notices from the IRS that they are still monitoring my number and that nobody has turned in a false tax thing. So I get regular notice from them. We've not gotten anything from FAFSA, so I'm assuming Chris is not in that data, but we don't know if there are any Alabamians in it or not.
And I can tell a story, I had a follow-up from this morning. I would like to know more, I would like to have more information about the now defunct institute.
Barksdale.
Yeah.
That-
Oh, okay.
They're sunsetting next summer, not this summer.
I didn't want to bring the name up again.
But we'll get all that for you. Be glad for you
Okay.
to look at that. But thank you.
Ms. West, you told me you had questions?
I just have a couple of short ones. You already answered one regarding the memo, the at-risk disbursements, like the schools and the
Yeah.
amounts that went out.
Yes.
It's helpful for us to know which ones of our school systems got these grants, these disbursements, and which ones didn't. And so that's helpful, I think, to us. And then also, I noticed the contract law, I'm not sure when it went, well, it goes into effect October 1st. And there's some changes in the contract law. And I'm not quite sure, is that gonna impact how we do RFPs, how we do the bid process? How will that impact us?
It may, it's changes in the state procurement
Right,
law.
yeah.
And so that's all managed by the finance director's office. And they are doing, training sessions right now for procurement people. And I think we have people signed up to go to the trainings, but I don't know, Brandon, I don't know if I'm looking at you, but I know we have
They're in the
people
near
signed up
future,
to go to the trainings.
We've just got emails that they've signed us up for the class.
Yeah.
For the
So we don't really
classes.
know what the
People in
changes
class,
are
and
be.
they're doing training on the new.
Will you let us know, I mean,
Yeah.
once y'all, complete
You
that.
wanna go with me too? I think it's all important training.
Oh, I gotta have a summary report.
Yes.
We'll invite anybody that wants to go sit down, that's fine.
But yes, we'll,
You're too.
when they go, and that'll be kind of those, you hear me talk about Lynn Show, she's one of our
Yes.
accountants and all those folks. When they get those things, Cindy Gillespie does procurement for us, yes, if there are rules that are gonna change for us, we'll give you an update.
Well, this would be, something we,
That's
obviously, I'm so
yeah.
glad y'all are going, because this is something that I would think, we want to make sure we are in full compliance, and I'm not sure what the law, how much it's changed, but
Yeah, I didn't
it's-
follow that as it was going through. I knew they were making some changes, but they're very technical kind of procurement things, I think. I know they're trying to, in a lot of ways, the legislature's been giving agencies, not us, but like finance and personnel, more latitude, trying to modernize things, basically, and make things easier to purchase.
well, and with contracts too, thinking about what you had mentioned about the at-risk funds, that now we have to have a final report from the entity that received the funds. When we give out contracts, we award contracts, I should say, is there accountability in place? Do we make sure that the entity that received the funds complies with their measurable, what did you say, deliverables, I think,
Yes.
with what, and so we do that. We have that follow-up.
Absolutely.
And if that entity did not, I would assume that maybe next time they submit a bid, we
They
might
won't
not
get
look
it.
favorably on them.
That's exactly right. So we do, so some of them are really big, and it depends on, so like, if it's federal programs is doing a contract, then they have the responsibility to make sure the deliverables are met. If the deliverables are not met, in some cases, we can withhold some of the funds. But we do absolutely follow up on that. Now, if it's what we call pass-through money, where the legislature designates who gets the money,
Right.
then we don't have as much follow-up. So although the Coaches Association, there are two coaches associations that get money from us. The legislature tells us how much money to send them. We don't require a report from them, because that's really an agreement between them and the legislature. We are the pass-through agency. And we have like 50 of those that we support, but they get a legislative designation. But if it's something that we are initiating, then yes, we measure those deliverables closely. And most of our contracts are paid for with federal money, so there's an additional layer of rules on top of that.
Well, I guess, and this was in AL.com, but the special ed contracts, and the one, of course, the largest one is gonna jump out at you. So the 4.2 million one, I think there were other smaller ones, but that was the one that jumped out when I was looking at contract review. I guess it was concerning to me when I read the article that seems to be a program, a subgroup of our students, but a very important group of our students who have not progressed academically as much as we would expect and want. And I guess I was a little bit concerned, because that was the first I knew that they had not been progressing as they should. You know, it was, I think, Tricia, did you say 5 years? It was 5 years that the federal government had reached out to us and told us that they were dissatisfied with, and I don't know the exact legal wording, but our students were not performing as well as they believe they should be. And so how can we as a board be better aware of that in any subgroup, whether it's high poverty or Black students or EL students, just so that we can better address it up front.
And this company, they would be worth for a meal if they can actually bring those scores up. Is there accountability there that we can see the scores?
Yes, I agree.
Deal with that one, and that's a very good example. So this has been an ongoing issue for, I don't know what AL.com article says, but for over 2 decades in Alabama, that there's this persistent gap between our special needs population and the general population. We're not the only state that's there. Most states have this gap. But one that the Lee Chambers really wants to work on, this Director of Special Education. And so she was able to use IDEA Part B funds to say we really want to target some high quality modules, professional development, work with our teachers, and try to close that, make a real run at closing that achievement gap. Not to say other people haven't wanted to close it before, because I know they have. Many people have wanted to, and at the local level, people want to. But, so we did, or she did. Y'all know me, I stay out of the RFP contract process because it's just better to stay out of it. But they had, it was a big project. She had 19 proposals scored. They awarded, actually wrote that down, awarded 11 proposals to 8 different vendors. And to work on increasing outcome for special needs students. Which has put us in good light with the feds because they're glad we're doing this work. DeLee is welcome, that she's at Mega presenting, but she said she'd be glad even, and this is not something you'd have to vote on, so we could do like an afternoon session for those who wanted to, and she would talk more in depth about what the work is that they're going to do. It's a very long process because they went back and forth even after they went through the RFP process and found the most reputable, responsive bidders. They wanted to know more about the actual modules. And I know Ms. Martin got involved because at one point, one of the vendors had some really good stuff, but it was just general information. And she said, no, I want all this. I want to see each one of these things you say you're going to do tied to Alabama teaching standards, our standards. And so the company had to go back and do that extra work. So it's taken several months to get there. And anyway, so I appreciate that because this is a huge step forward, very positive. We've gotten such good response from the feds about it. And so she would be glad to spend an afternoon to go through it. And I would say we do it at the August work session, but that might be getting a lot. But it is good to know, and to your deeper question, Dr. McCarty, about, they're so, y'all know, it's a huge department. There's always stuff going on. I tell everybody here, I try to know 100 things 1 inch deep, but I know very little about all the things that are going on because there are just so many projects. Arts, Andy has twice had to reschedule because I've canceled on him because he just wants 2 hours to just go through all the things that arts education is going to do this year. We just haven't had time to meet together. But I know he's working on it, and he's got a plan. And so special ed, federal programs, and COVID. COVID's been made everything even more.
Well, Dr. Mackey, with regards to like this subgroup, now it has me concerned that maybe some of the other subgroups aren't performing as well as we had hoped that they would.
Well,
How do we get that information?
well, we report all that. I mean, we report all that out, all the subgroups, but only special ed is it's the only protected subgroup that they're actually, the Office of Special Education Programs looks at that performance gap. Now, we send out, every year we have to do notifications to superintendents if their gap between special ed, and there's really three categories. So either the gap's close enough that you're not in trouble, it's far enough apart that you have to make this a special priority, or it's really far apart and you have to really make it a priority. Plus, that's what our schools, we have, in school improvement, we identify CSI schools, comprehensive school improvement, the bottom 5%. But then we have many more schools in ATSIs. It's targeted support. And we identify those every year. And how they get targeted support is your overall population is okay, but the subgroups are not. And we send a letter to the superintendent, notify them. These are your subgroups that are out of order or out of sync, and by how much, and what you have to have an ATSI plan. So again, there's a huge amount of work going on constantly on this. I don't spend much time on it. The ATSI list,
Well, the ones where the subgroups are less than expected. Like for District 6, I would like to know which ones of my schools have subgroups who are doing less than expected.
Yeah.
And I'm not the one to set the expected, y'all are smart with that, but just to know, and so, I guess I don't like being surprised, I'm always surprised, and that we weren't doing better, with that subgroup and those children. And then I've got one last question. I saw the ACEs report that came out just a few days ago, I think, and it was about teacher shortages and that kind of thing. And lots of good facts in there, but one of the facts that they said was that each year 25% of our college education graduates do not enter public education. What can we do research to find out what they're doing?
Do not enter, say that again, the same statement.
Each year, 25% of our college of education graduates who get their first certification do not enter public education.
As an employee.
Right, they don't enter a school
So
system. So we've got 25% of certified people.
She went to the commission meeting. I can tell you some of their data were.
That just horrified me that we got 25%.
So what they cannot tell though, Dr. McCarty, is whether they just don't enter the profession at all or whether they enter in another state.
Yeah, so some of those went to another state.
Is when they complete
Or
the
private
approved program, they move back home or wherever they're moving to, and that's where they begin teaching. RSA only has the information for Alabama, so they don't know where these individuals are.
Okay.
Thank you, because that's what I thought they would. So what they did is they took graduates and then matched them to whether they were a member of the retirement systems of Alabama the next fall. If they went to a private school or out of state, you have to remember, University of Alabama, almost 60% of their students are out-of-state students, and they do not stay, and most of them do not stay in Alabama when they graduate. So yeah, that's
why I
not
asked
just
you to
part.
restate the question, because I look at the data, and the data certainly indicated only a negative figure, not where they went or where they didn't go. It's like when I had a conversation with the dean of Miles College there about where their students went to school. They said they left the state after a year or two, because that's the reality that we have. We have mobility.
What just seemed a tragedy, that 25%.
Yeah.
No,
And
they
when
choose
we
to
go
do
to
something
teacher
else.
shortage.
They might have gone to graduate school. They might have become physicians.
And that's true.
There's a whole myriad of other chances. I didn't take it as a negative figure at all. I looked at it, only 25% did not go into employment in public education, which to me is pretty amazing that 75% did. The data was presented in a negative point. As a statistician, I tell you, I can make you look bad if I won't present the data in a certain way. The data was presented, 25% didn't, but 25% did something else. Including people like me, they might have become military officers or something else and go to ROTC. Who knows?
We
They
Yeah, those
didn't
are very
become
I'll give you a good, but for the future, even though you're leaving us, what we're doing with the Power School personnel module, in the district, some of them fussed about having to get all their teachers in it, but we're gonna have better data than we've ever had before about being able to track and trace our teachers and see where they're moving and coming in and out. And I know Ms. Harris has worked really hard on that. And it's, we're baseline, but in the future we'll have better. Now, it'll be hard for students, Dr. McCarty, because again, there's not a good way to match up students, college students, and where they go next, unless they show up in our system. If they get in the retirement system, we know they're here, but we don't know. So those 25% are not. It's accurate to say they are not teaching in an Alabama school, an Alabama public school
That's all.
next year.
That's the only thing we can say.
But many of them are teaching somewhere.
Maybe they should be writing us a letter telling us where they went. Dear Mom.
And we're hopefully picking up some people from other states.
Well, that's
that are
right.
here, but
Exactly.
we don't have a
Yeah.
way
Could
to
you
know.
bill it, they could go on in military schools and not be there's a lot of things you can do and not be the TRS. And that's what I read the data, and I think I was correct. Any more questions, Mary?
I'm good.
I have one comment, and I know that Ms. Bell sent me a message. It was about the $4.2 million PCG contract. And I guess what attracted my attention was the initials PCG. And in the process, I'm not into getting into the weeds about how an RFP is generated, but the striking figure to me was that this report was made to the legislature about approval of this contract and I was not aware of it at all. As an officer of the board and as a constitutional officer, I felt that was an omission. And not next week, but I intend to participate in this contract course because I think if we're board members and we want our staff to do things, we're not committed ourselves to find out. We can't ask everything secondary. That's why I was asking her what specifically you were asking for Dr. Mackey. Because I didn't discern it. I'd have to listen to it again to see what Ms. Bell really wanted. But that process where the PCG contract was awarded and the $4.2 million was discussed with the legislative committee that never went before us was concerning to me. And I don't know if there was a one bid recipient, if it was a single bid. And my first experience coming on this board was being interviewed very briefly by David Driscoll with PCG. And my experience was not as positive as I would have had it to be. And David Driscoll, Dr. Driscoll is well aware of that. But I would hope that, not that I want to know how the process works, but not August, but maybe September as we move into the budget process, the whole concept of how contracts are derived, who writes RFPs, and what the chain of command is informed. Because when I see somebody going to the legislature to explain how money were spent, and we're the constitutional authorities, that's a problem with me. And that's the discussion I had with Rachel Riddle. They can let whatever contract they want to, but we, the board, cannot forego our constitutional responsibility. The legislature cannot give that away. Only we can give it away. And I'm not prepared to give that away. And that was my problem with the PCG report. And I understand Dr. Mackey didn't get involved, but why in God's name were they explaining something to the legislature about $4.2 million they spent with PCG, and I had no knowledge of it? I realized I was just pro tem of the board, but I had no knowledge of it. And actually, the article, and Trish is here, the article that initially said one fund source, and after call of Dr. Mackey, they changed in the article the fund source, correct? Originally it was I think ESSER funds and then change
ESSER
the
funds,
spec.
but it's actually.
But the initial
IDEA,
report,
be
It was
then-
Part B funds.
Because I do read AL.com at least once a day. So when that report came out, I saw that, and then it was one fund source, and then it changed to a different fund source. So the idea of how that happens and who the reports are made to is important to me.
So we send y'all the contract review report every month, but we'll try to make sure that everybody sees it, and that, if there are any questions, we get them answered for you.
That's not the way it was presented before. We actually have more information in those because I was the one who requested the contract review committee agendas, and we're now getting them maybe either a day after or a day before, not to fault the person who sends it to us. But the information before actually had the sheet, at least one, the sheet where they have the signatures, perhaps your
Yeah, the
signature,
cover
and
sheet.
then
Okay.
the person representing, Mr. Driscoll, but Dr. Driscoll. But the fact is that we're not getting a lot of information, and we used to get a whole lot more information, even if it was just that one sheet for each contract, whether it was a contract for special needs children or if it was actually, and there are a lot of contracts, as you know, that have to do with that area, but also attorneys when they were on contract for some kind of special.
Right, which is what most of our contracts are. They're attorneys'
But we would
contracts
have
to do.
the actual sheet
due
with
process.
all of the information. Now it's very limited. We have these little one-liners. It tells you nothing. And that's just recently started, so.
And Stephanie, didn't we get them about a week before?
We got them a week
That
before.
it went to committee?
As soon as they reached, this department, they would
Yeah.
forward them to the board, not just to me, but to the board. And the request was made so that the board would at least have that information, and if a board member wanted to, they could do it independently. They represent their district, but they could go to the contract review
Absolutely.
committee. They could actually contact if their legislative or serves on that committee, or they don't. You could still go and either speak or request to speak and then sit in. I never did that. I have friends who were on the committee, so I could call and ask them about it. But, they can delay contracts, but they don't stop them. And so those contracts actually, if there's a delay, they'll go through unless there's something really wrong with them. But at least this board would have that knowledge before that meeting, and I think that's important. And you just heard someone share that, but I think it's one of those things that and I hate that I'm so used to, but it wasn't that long ago when we got that information. We all have received it, so it's important for all the reasons I've already stated. So if you can make sure that you receive it, as well as the additional information. We get the agenda, but we'd also get, and it was just restricted to the education part of their agenda, but we'd also get those one-sheeters that have a lot of good information.
Yeah, I know what
We could ask for
information you're
more.
talking about. Okay.
By the way, were there multiple bidders in that 4.2 million contract that was awarded?
There were.
Because I asked you that.
Yeah, what did I say a minute ago? There were 19 scored proposals from 17 vendors. 8 vendors were funded. 11 of the proposals and 8 of the vendors were funded, and the other,
The 8 vendors totaled 4.2 million, or one vendor was 4.2 million.
they totaled more than that, I think.
Because what it said was the PCG contract was 4.2 million. I don't know, I only know what I read in the paper. And
There were 19 proposals from 17 vendors, and 11 proposals were funded to 8 vendors.
so PCG
was
just was
one
one
of
of
the
them.
vendors.
That 4.2 million was just PCG's share, right?
I'm not sure about that.
Okay. That's what I want to have more clarity about, and I think that's what Ms. Bell was talking about too, because I don't know why are they reporting to the legislature when they haven't when we don't know either.
Well, probably because the original contract
Came from.
really was with the legislature when they sort of hired them.
So the other PCG contract has nothing to do with this. This is two
I'm not
different
talking about
things.
the other PC, I'm talking this one.
Okay, well, so all contracts have to go through the contract, the legislative review committee. There's
Okay.
just the process, they have to. And we send you the notice, I hear what you're saying, you want more information, and I'm fine with that, I don't send it.
And
But it comes before the meeting, then they have the meeting, it goes to contract review, then it goes to the governor's office for an additional review, and then, of course, she has to sign every contract. So it's a long, multi-month process to get a contract, but that's why they have to go through contract review with the legislature. Every agency,
Well, the other issue is that new contract originate with this department and with you. Ultimately, I would think that stops with you. But, or did it originate with the legislature like the original PCG? So I guess that's the question too, that needs to be answered. Who, did you decide we needed to have that,
special ed contract
right?
initiated in this department. I'm sorry if I thought I said that earlier, that the Lee Chambers was working with the U.S. Department of Ed and OSEP, all special education programs, and felt like we needed to improve outcomes for special needs children. And therefore did this huge package of RFPs, 19 different proposals came in. And so that was one of them, or a part of it, went to PCG. Other companies, other vendors got other parts of it. But I will say, it's a completely different arm of PCG. Two different teams do two different things, answer to two different bosses. The IDEA contract is with us, using IDEA Part B funds, not COVID funds like was originally reported in the news. But it is held by our department when the governor signs it. I'm not sure she signed it yet. I don't think she has, which is make me a little nervous talking about a contract that's not actually been executed. But it's been awarded for our part. We recommended that, but based on the process, that the governor sign the contract. And the contract review committee has approved it and recommended the governor sign the contract. When it's signed, then we'll be the holders of that contract. The other PCG contract is held by examiners, not by us. And it uses state funds, whereas this one uses federal funds.
Okay.
Got it?
Any other questions or comments? You
Yeah,
said-
Dr. McCarty wants her information. Everybody does. So. Lauren, where do we have those? Don't you have them? They're by district.
Thank you. I will be back.
Yes, thank y'all.
Well,
Yeah, all